possible. Remember that Lauren Talbert is sharing her expertise, and any information from tonight or questions pertaining to individual concerns should be addressed with your doctor. It is with my great pleasure that we have Lauren Talbert, registered dietitian, board-certified specialist in oncology nutrition, here tonight. She currently works for Sodexo as a registered dietitian for the program in women's oncology at Women and Infants Hospital at Rhode Island. Thank you, Lauren, for sharing your time and expertise with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me, Robin. And everybody, thank you so much for dialing in and listening tonight. I really hope that I provide some information that you find useful and helpful. I know that the topic of oncology nutrition can be very confusing, and I just want to make sure that tonight, everybody gets something out of it. And I have done a lot of public speaking in my career, but this, I have to say, is my first webinar. That being said, we are going to get started. And again, I just want to thank Robin and Support Connection for inviting me to do this presentation. Those of you that have heard me present in the past definitely know my passion about oncology nutrition, and hopefully those of you that are listening at the talk tonight will soon learn how passionate I am. So I titled this presentation tonight, Stop Confusion and Start Control, because I feel like as an oncology dietitian, I am constantly doing this. I am stopping patients' confusion, and I'm giving them a sense of control in a situation where they have not as much control as they would like. So we'll get started. Okay. So here's a little bit about me. I completed my nutrition internship at Brigham and Women's Hospital and Dana-Farber in Boston, Massachusetts. And I actually became interested in oncology nutrition when my grandmother was diagnosed with stomach cancer when I was in high school. Actually, since then, I've been pretty into it. And after my internship, I started working at Women and Infants Hospital, and I've been at Women and Infants for the past 12 years. As Robin explained, I am a board-certified specialist in oncology nutrition. So to do so, you need to basically have a certain amount of hours of experience with oncology patients, and you have to pass a test. And you actually have to pass that test every 5 years, and it is not easy. So I'm proud to say that I am one of 3 board-certified oncology dietitians in Rhode Island, and there's about 550 in the country. I'm also a STAR-certified dietitian, clinician in oncology rehab, which is pretty cool. So just that's a little bit about my training that I've had. I do have 3 children. Lila, she's 5, Jobson's 3, and Jet is 1. And I have a pretty busy life, working full-time and obviously taking care of my children. So I cannot relate to patients in the fact that I have never had cancer, but I can relate to some of the busyness and hectic schedule and trying to stay healthy with that being a challenge. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. My main objectives as a dietitian are to educate, to stop fear, and motivate. And I think when it comes to oncology and nutrition, there's a lot of information out there that can scare us. And as a dietitian, I really just want to give people the facts and simplify what feels complicated. And again, provide motivation to start trying to follow some of these recommendations and really making it doable and real in your life. Because there's a big difference between what you want to do and what you do. And I think my outlook as a dietitian is just trying to shift you towards what is recommended for you. I do not judge, I help. So sometimes I have patients say, I can't tell you what I ate for dinner last night, or, don't watch me eat this cookie as like they're getting their chemo treatment. And a constant saying that I say to them is, I don't judge, I help. I really am just trying to help people, and I think that my approach has actually been pretty effective throughout the years. So this is what I'm going to talk about tonight. Again, talking about stopping confusion and starting control. I'm going to define some roadblocks that I've identified when it comes to following nutrition recommendations, and I'm going to provide some tips to overcome them. We are going to talk about survivorship nutrition, specifically recommendations with regards to diet, supplement, and exercise. I'm going to give a little bit more information about what a plant-based diet is and give you some ideas of how you could kind of shift towards a plant-based diet. And most importantly, I'm going to talk about how to make it work for you, because it would be really interesting if I talked for about 45 minutes about what you should do and what is recommended that you do. But what's most important is how you do it. And everybody's different. Everybody has different habits, different lifestyles, different goals. So I hope that you take the information that I provide with you tonight and figure out how you can make it doable with your life. So here are some roadblocks when it comes to nutrition, specifically oncology nutrition, that I have identified from my experience with patients. But fatigue, confusion, and time. And I'm going to go through a little bit with each of the roadblocks and talk about them specifically. So as breast and ovarian cancer survivors, I am preaching to the choir. Every patient that I have had has some degree of fatigue during their treatment at some point. And from what I have experienced, I think that this is one of the most common and distressing side effects. It's different from fatigue of daily life, and I'm sure you guys are sitting at home or wherever you are listening, nodding your heads. But this is what I've learned from my patients, that it's kind of like just pulls you really, really down, and it's just like talk about a ton of bricks on your back. And there's a lot of things that cause this fatigue. It's not just like, oh, my chemo makes me tired, or, oh, I have this diagnosis, or, oh, there's a whole new language, this cancer language that I'm trying to learn. There's a lot of reasons why people are tired during and after cancer treatment. And here are some minor tips that may help manage it, but this can be a definite roadblock to following nutrition recommendations. So tips to manage fatigue: you want to rest, but you don't want to rest too much. So the way I explain it to my patients is sometimes if you're tired and you do a little bit of activity, maybe a short walk, it gives you a boost of energy, but sometimes when you're tired, you just need to nap. Again, staying active can be helpful. Save your energy. So, if you're really tired, there's certain things that you may want to do. You may want to prepare your meals, or you may want to play with your grandchildren, or you may want to take your time to garden. Save your energy. I also think it's important to ask for help. From my experience at Women and Infants, I do mainly work with women. And I've noticed that a lot of women find it hard to ask for help. And I think that when it comes to cancer and dealing with so many things, asking for help is a really good idea. And sometimes people want to help you, but they don't know how to. So one thing I would suggest is maybe come up with some ideas of things that you would like to eat, and they could cook it for you, or they could purchase it for you. And obviously, when you eat well, you have a little bit more energy. So here's another roadblock, and to me, this is the biggest roadblock that I can help manage, and it's confusion. So I'm going to be talking, and everybody will be excited, or maybe not excited, but I will be talking about soy eventually in this presentation, and I would say that is one of the most talked about topics I explain to patients. But when it comes to oncology nutrition, everybody in the media, not everybody I should say, but, a lot of websites are kind of having these crazy claims or suggesting patients do certain things that seem a little intense or expensive or stressful. And a lot of times patients come to me and they're like, I just don't know what to do. And I am very familiar with that confused face and that, well, my neighbor told me that I can't eat fruit because it has sugar, and my cousin told me that I have to eat all organic foods, and so-and-so's cousin also had a history of cancer, and they told me I can only eat juice. So I deal with this a lot, and today hopefully I will kind of manage the confusion part. The best way to manage confusion as a patient is to get your information from reputable web resources. So as an oncology dietitian, I say to my patients, only ask me when it comes to nutrition. I may not be the expert in, your medicine, but I am the expert in your nutrition. But here are some websites that I find very useful for my own self, but I also encourage patients to use. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the Oncology Nutrition Practice Group, which is what I belong to. Their website is oncologynutrition.org. American Institute for Cancer Research is basically the best resource for oncology nutritionists, and they have the most up-to-date information with, with regards to what to eat to prevent cancer and then what to eat as a survivor. American Cancer Society, Sloan Kettering, and Dana-Farber. So this is just a infographic explaining the recommendations for survivorship nutrition. The first is to maintain a healthy weight. We are encouraging patients to move more, eat well, follow a plant-based diet, and I'll talk a little bit more about what exactly a plant-based diet is. Reduce red meat and avoid processed meat. I'll explain a little bit more about that. Limit alcohol. So for females, it's 1 alcoholic beverage or less per day. And I've definitely been asked the question, can I add it, save them all for the week and then have 5 on Friday? Unfortunately, the recommendation is not to do that. Eat less salt. And after cancer treatment, cancer survivors should follow the same recommendations. So when I talk about cancer-fighting diet or recommendations to fight cancer, it's the same if you've ever had cancer or you have never had cancer. And those who can, there is a good amount of research to show if you can breastfeed, it lowers your risk for certain cancers. And we are going to talk about this. Do not use supplements to prevent cancer. So I love the plant-based diet, and I definitely see some 401 numbers on this call. And hello, my Rhode Island ladies. Any of my Rhode Island ladies know that I do love the plant-based diet, and I talk a lot about it. And the reason why I talk a lot about it is because the research backs it up. So research has shown that people that follow more of a plant-based diet, which I will explain more in detail, have less diabetes, lower blood pressure, better heart health, lower cholesterol, better vision health. They can lose weight, live longer, and for tonight's sake, prevent cancer or lower their risk. That's the best way to kind of word it, lower your risk for developing cancer. So what is a plant-based diet? And lately it's been more popular in the media, a plant-based diet, in the recommendations to do so, but I think people can be confused about that. So basically a plant-based diet is eating more plant-based foods. I have this quote that I say to patients, and I didn't make it up. I don't really know where it came from, but if it comes from a plant, eat it. But if it was made in a plant, don't eat it, meaning if it was like made in a factory and it was packaged. But plant-based foods are foods that come from the ground. Vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes. That includes like dried beans and lentils, nuts, seeds, spices, coffee and tea. So coffee and tea are basically plants that are brewed. I'm sure that everybody has heard the back and forth with coffee's good, coffee's bad. I wouldn't say that coffee is technically bad. I would say what you put in your coffee may be not as healthy. So a plant-based diet is not vegan or necessarily vegetarian. It's basically eating the majority of your foods from a plant-based source. So the New American Plate basically took over the old pyramid, which, to be honest, I thought was a little confusing. But the New American Plate is suggesting that 2/3 or more of your plate is vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and beans. And 1/3 of your plate or less is animal protein, like dairy, poultry, and behind that picture is fish. I think it's really important when you're thinking about your overall diet is to think about balance. So if you have seen me or heard me present before, you've heard that I talk about my acronym FFP. Fat, fiber, and protein promote satiety. So these are the nutrients that actually make you feel fuller longer. If you eat something that is quickly digested, guess what? You're hungry sooner. Think about if you had a candy bar or something. It's pretty easily digested. But if you have a little bit of fat, a healthy fat would be best, like an olive oil or avocado on your salad, and you included some fiber, like whole grains or fruits and vegetables, and some lean protein, which you could get from animal products in a lean way, but you could also get it from plants through things like tofu and beans. So I think it's important to balance that. I also think it's important to balance your meals, portion-wise and balancing it in terms of the nutrients. I also think it's extremely important to have set times. So anybody that has met with me privately knows that I set times on their meals. And it's not that you have to eat at 8:05. It's just that around 8 o'clock you have your breakfast. Maybe around 10 o'clock you have a snack. When you start treating your body with more of a system, you're sleeping, you're eating, your body actually functions better, and it gets used to that system. So a lot of people skip breakfast, and they say, well, I'm not hungry for breakfast. Why would I eat it? Because breakfast is what basically jumpstarts, your metabolism. And if you start eating breakfast, guess what? You'll start being hungry in the morning. So it's important to really think about the times that you eat. So one of the topics that we had, Robin and I had discussed that I would quickly review is about organic. So a lot of the times patients ask me, should I eat organic food? Should I not? Or ever since I got diagnosed with this cancer, I'm completely buying organic food, but wow, it's so expensive. I just want to read you this quote, and this is from the Oncology, Nutrition, Dietary Practice Group. When it comes to health benefits, there have not been any direct studies on humans to show that organic foods can prevent cancer or other diseases any more effectively than conventionally grown foods. So basically they're saying that there's not enough research to show that organics are that much better than non-organic. However, if you think about it, obviously organic, which if you look at the examples below in the table defining what conventional organic is, it makes sense that you would want to eat more organic foods because it has less additives. However, not everybody can afford all organic foods because it's expensive. I'm just going to take a sip of my water. So the Environmental Working Group has had this the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, and they've had this for several years, and each year they kind of update it. So basically what they do is they just test a lot of produce and see which has the higher levels of pesticides and which has the lower levels. And if you want to purchase organic, but you don't want to purchase all organic, I would encourage you to purchase organic produce that are in the Dirty 12 or Dirty Dozen category. And if you look at this list, most of these foods do have thin skins. That's the way I kind of explain it and educate it. Most of the foods do have thin skins, so think strawberries or pears or even tomatoes. And then if you look to the category of the Clean 15, these foods typically have a thicker skin that you don't eat. So look at avocados and corn and pineapples, or even things like cauliflower or broccoli that in the way that they're grown, they have, an outer layer that is picked off before you consume it. So the recommendations for red and processed meats. Let's first explain what red and processed meats are. Red meat is beef, pork, or lamb. And I remember 12 years ago when I became an oncology dietitian, I was shocked to learn that pork was red meat because I always thought it was the other white meat. But technically, beef, pork, and lamb are considered red meats. And the recommendation is to limit red meat and avoid processed meat. So processed meats would be anything like lunch meat or hot dogs, sausages, bacon, any type of meat that has actually been processed. The recommendations are 18 ounces or less a week of red meat, and really to try to avoid processed meat. So the way that I educate my patients is I want you to shift. If you were the type of person that eats red meat 3 times a week, but even say it's under this 18 ounces, I would encourage you to try to have red meat twice a week. And the reason why I'm saying that is we know it's not that healthy. We know that we need to limit it for cancer reasons, but also for other reasons, like most people know, such as heart health. So why not shift away from it? And when you shift away from it, hey, maybe you'll pick up a meatless meal, and then you'll get more plant foods in. So I like to talk more about foods that we should eat more of instead of foods we should eat less of. I think that it creates a positive and a better outlook when it comes to nutrition, and people don't feel like they're restricted as much. Sugar. So sugar that is added to foods, and actually the new Nutrition Facts label does differentiate between natural sugars and added sugars, which is really interesting. But sugar that is added to foods, think like desserts, think like soda, think like candy. We all know that that's not the healthiest. So this is the recommendation for lowering your risk for cancer, or as a cancer survivor, lowering your risk for recurrence, is to limit your added sugars. Now, when I'm talking about sugar, I'm not talking about an apple or a banana. I think sometimes people can get confused about that, and I've had patients, as soon as they get diagnosed with their cancer, just eliminate anything that is sweet. And fruits are good for you. Obviously, you could overdo it with fruits, but I'm not that concerned about that. I frequently say to my patients or presentations that I have, nobody is overweight or gaining lots of weight because they're binge eating on watermelon at night. People aren't overeating carrots. Frequently people say, oh, carrots have too much sugar in them. I can't eat carrots. I'm sorry. People are overeating carbohydrates in the junk form. They're either eating cookies or candy or chips or cake or crackers. They're eating that. That's what's leading to their weight gain, not fruit, not carrots. So eat your carrots. That's what I say to my daughter. Eat your carrots. Let's go on to supplements. You really only want to take dietary supplements to correct a deficiency. So I live in Rhode Island, and most people are deficient in vitamin D in New England because basically between October and April, even if it's sunny out, you don't absorb vitamin D. So you may need to take vitamin D to correct your deficiency. And if you are interested to know if you are deficient in vitamin D, you can actually get blood work done to see if you are. There are no other supplements or no supplements in general that have been shown specifically to fight cancer. And actually, there's pretty interesting research to show that when people do take certain supplements, specifically vitamin E or selenium or even vitamin C, they may increase their risk of getting certain types of cancer. So they have actually done studies with people that are at risk for cancer, and they give them supplements, and they stop the study early because people were getting more cancer. It was called the SELECT trial, where they were looking at men with prostate cancer. So you really only want to take supplements to correct the deficiency. Save your money. Don't buy them. Buy some carrots. Physical activity. So the recommendations for physical activity for cancer survivors are basically the same recommendations for general health. There is research to show that people that are cancer survivors that do exercise have a lower risk of recurrence and a lower risk of death. They have an improved quality of life, fatigue, psychosocial distress, and depression. This is for the majority of, people in general. When you exercise, it does make you feel good. Obviously, it gives you a little bit of energy. Obviously, it can build muscle, but it gives you a sense of accomplishment. There's one study that looked at breast cancer survivors with exercise, and they showed that those survivors that exercise regularly had a 34% lower risk of breast cancer death, 41% lower risk of all-cause mortality, and a 24% lower risk of breast cancer recurrence. That's pretty cool. That's some pretty significant numbers. So I'm not saying you need to start running half marathons, but any time that you're not sitting, you're doing some form of an exercise. Even if you're watching TV at night and you could, stand in place or, do some side steps. I found this article last year on the American Institute of Cancer Research's website, and I thought it was so cool that I started including it in my website and my presentation. So basically, they looked at 113 studies with a good amount of cancer survivors, a little over 11,000. And what they were trying to figure out was what helps these patients with their fatigue. And they put them in these different categories. And basically, they showed, while all 4 interventions led to some improvements in cancer fatigue, exercise alone showed the largest effect. And it didn't matter what the exercise was. So I think that's really important. It's really easy to suggest that somebody exercises when they're so tired, but I do have to say my patients that do some form of exercise do report feeling better. And again, it's not easy to do, but sometimes if you do a little bit more exercise, it'll make you feel better. So here's another roadblock: time. So as a patient, you may have a lot of appointments. You may be working, dealing with family, events, life. I mean, everybody's busy. Everybody has their own reasons for being busy. I say this quote frequently as well: if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And as a mother of 3 who works full-time and exercises most days of the week, I know that. If I don't have a game plan for dinner, I'm doing something really quick and easy. But if I think about it and I have a game plan, it's a lot healthier. I would encourage the Sunday game plan. So this is basically, it doesn't have to be Sunday. It's just one day of the week where you sort of organize what you're going to eat. And when I explain this, I don't mean that you need to organize every single bite that you put into your mouth for the week, but maybe just get a general game plan of what you feel like you would be eating. So here are some ideas. When you do have that day that you have time, bake something. Maybe bake a bunch of chicken or bake some fish, grill, crock pot. There's a ton of different recipes for things that you can throw in the crock pot and kind of make like one dish out of that or a soup out of that. Chop. So when I have time and I'm cutting up vegetables for a salad, I actually, I have my cutting board out. Let me just cut up more vegetables and throw them in some Pyrex containers. So then tomorrow when I want to have a salad or if I want to make a stir fry, the vegetables are already cut up. Another thing with a crock pot that I recommend to patients is to crock pot chicken in the beginning of the week. So basically you just put chicken in the crock pot with some water, and if you want like a bouillon cube or use like a broth. And basically when you take it out, you just have plain pulled chicken. So when the week comes, you can use your chicken in different ways. There are also shortcuts. So yes, it may be a little bit more expensive, some of them. Some of them may not be as expensive, but they can really save you a lot of time. And if you think about the comparison of cooking something at home versus buying something out, it actually ends up costing less. So grocery stores have these spiralized vegetables, or they even have the vegetables all cut up, and you basically just throw it in your pan with your sauce. You can buy a lot of really cool frozen things. So I like the riced veggies. I like the frozen spiral veggies. You can buy frozen quinoa, frozen brown rice. Actually, tonight at dinner, I had one of these chopped salad kits. It wasn't the Dole one, but it had cabbage and kale and carrots and this orange vinaigrette with some sesame seeds. It was really good. Broccoli slaw is another thing that I currently suggest people try because you can saute it with like some type of protein and some type of sauce, or I like to put it in a wrap with hummus. I really like broccoli slaw, or I'll throw it on my salad. I mean, honestly, with having 3 kids and not having a lot of time, I frequently just have like mesclun mix and a bunch of broccoli slaw and maybe some extra shredded carrots, and that's my salad. So say on the day that you had time, you bake some chicken. One day you could have the chicken with maybe some quinoa and some tomatoes and maybe like a balsamic vinaigrette. Another day you could have the chicken with some fresh spinach and maybe some teriyaki sauce or soy sauce and brown rice. The next day you could take that same chicken and put it in a wrap with tomatoes and avocado. Or you make a bunch of lentils. One day you can make like a caprese-style salad with the tomatoes and the basil. Another day you could maybe take a southwestern approach with corn and tomatoes and maybe like a little bit of cheese and shove it in a pepper. Another day you can make a lentil burger with maybe like a barbecue flavor. So basically what you're doing is you have one staple and you're just kind of using it in different ways. This is my go-to. So anybody that's listening that knows me is probably smiling right now. I like to talk about roasting vegetables a lot because I'll take whatever vegetables I have, throw some olive oil and garlic, put them in the oven. To be honest, I forget about it. Today I had a lady and she said, so how long do you roast it for? And I said, to be honest, I roast it until I smell it, and then I hurry up and I open the oven and I try to quickly flip it and then roast it for a little bit longer. But it's about like maybe a half hour, 45 minutes. But so you take your roasted vegetables. One day maybe you make little panini, quesadillas. Another day you throw it on some whole wheat pasta. Another day you throw it in a salad. Some of you may have seen these mason jar salads where you can make them in the beginning of the week, but basically wets on the bottom and dries on the top. So you can see the salad dressings on the bottom, and then it goes to protein, absorbent vegetables, cheese nut seeds, greens, things like that. The second picture, you can basically make like an omelet, but you put it in muffin tins, and you can make it for the week. I like to hard boil a bunch of eggs in the beginning of the week and kind of take them as I go. The last picture is energy balls. Basically, the main ingredients is typically peanut butter and oats, and then you add different things. Like the other day I made them with my 3-year-old, and we put a little pumpkin and a little banana. And, you know, here I am sneaking in some produce for him, and he doesn't even know. Because then I put a little bit of mini chocolate chips. And you know what? If you put a little mini chocolate chips on anything, it tastes good. Just a little bit about fruits and vegetables. So, yes, we want to eat a good amount of fruits and vegetables, but the way I kind of explain to patients, because people will ask me, well, what should I eat? Which one? The brighter the color, the stronger the flavor, the more nutrients in it. So this is the yellow vegetable category. So think like butternut squash, carrots. So the top left is actually a really good recipe that we make. I roast butternut squash, and then I saute peppers and onions, and then I add the squash, and I add black beans, and I throw it in a burrito with like a little bit of salsa or avocado. And frequently we roast butternut squash. My new thing I shouldn't say my new thing. My husband's new thing is he roasts butternut squash, and then he adds roasted chickpeas and like a chana masala sauce, and it's really, really tasty. The next is cruciferous vegetables, which is broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, and I'm sure you've probably heard of cauliflower rice. The picture in the middle with the cashews is like a take on a fried rice with cauliflower. The bottom picture is of cauliflower mashed potatoes. I really like red cabbage. I think it gives things a good crunch, and it's got like a really cool flavor. I use it a lot in cooking. It would not be a Lauren Talbert presentation if I did not talk about soy. So I didn't say it in the beginning, but just a side note about myself. I am a vegetarian. So technically I'm a lacto-ovo-pescatarian, meaning I eat dairy, fish, and eggs. So I do eat a lot of soy. Actually, I ate some tofu tonight with my dinner. So soy foods are a great source of protein and vitamins and calcium and unsaturated fat. And you may be asking, what are soy foods? There's soy milk, soybeans, those are edamame, the little green beans you see on the picture, soy nuts, tofu. Please, please, please do not worry about consuming soy foods if you have ever had a history of cancer. So the whole confusion is that soy contains these nutrients called phytoestrogens. So phyto means plant and estrogen is estrogen. So we think that we see that word estrogen and we think, oh, my breast cancer was ER positive, estrogen receptor positive. I can't eat soy because it's going to feed the cancer. So phytoestrogens are not the same, and I repeat, phytoestrogens are not the same as female estrogen. Soy foods do not contain estrogen. And I'm saying it again so everybody will be totally clear with this. Soy foods do not contain estrogen. So one category of phytoestrogens in soy are called isoflavones. So a lot of foods have isoflavones, but soy has a lot, the majority of isoflavones. So years ago, they did some rodent studies, and they gave these rodents different amounts of isoflavone supplements. And those that got more isoflavone supplements developed more breast cancer. That is where the concern came from. And guess what? Humans and animals process these isoflavones very differently. So soy and cancer, worry not. Soy actually fights cancer. So if you go to that American Institute of Cancer Research website, AICR.org, there's a section that's really cool. It's called Foods That Fight Cancer. And soy is actually on that section, and there is a real lot of cool research to show that soy fights cancer. And there are a lot of studies to show that women that eat more soy foods have a lower risk of developing cancer. And there's also research to show girls in their adolescent years, when they consume soy, they have a lower risk of developing breast cancer. So guess what is in my fridge? Soy milk, tofu, edamame, all of it. And I am not afraid. And it tastes good. So current evidence suggests no adverse effects on recurrence or survival from consuming soy foods. And this is interesting. There's potential for these foods to exert positive synergistic effects with tamoxifen. And these are two studies. There's a late study and a well study. So if you're like super interested in this, Google those studies, and you'll find them interesting. And they basically showed that women that ate soy lived longer. But here's some food for thought. Are soy eaters healthier? So the way I explain this to my patients is, I'm providing you with the facts, so obviously I think soy is totally safe to eat. But if you think about it, somebody doesn't go to McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and then go home and make a tofu stir fry. Typically, people that consume soy have a healthier lifestyle. So in the studies, the people that did eat more soy exercised, didn't smoke, generally ate more vegetables. So, I can't say that I definitely think that soy is the only thing that would fight cancer. Like I've explained, there's a lot of things that have been shown to lower your risk of getting cancer or cancer recurrence. But the most important thing is to just know that it's okay. And when you start reading labels, you'll see soy in a lot of things. And I really just want to give you peace of mind with that. So this is a really cool infographic that the American Institute of Cancer Research created for breast cancer survivors. And looky, soy. I love showing this to my patients. As you can see, I'm very excited about soy. The report suggests that diets higher in soy after diagnosis improve survival. So a moderate amount of soy is 1 to 2 servings a day, and that's considered safe. Yes, you can eat soy. So the top left picture is like an awesome stir fry. The middle is kind of like making a hummus, but out of edamame, the beans. The right is a picture of soy milk. If you do get soy milk, I would encourage you to get the plain or the unsweetened, because the other ones have a little bit extra sugar, like the vanilla. The bottom is like a cabbage salad with edamame. and the left is just plain old edamame. That's just a great snack. So to sum it up, confusion leads to fear and stress. So I think when it comes to anything in life, if you're confused, you could definitely have some fear and stress. But when it comes to oncology nutrition, it can really lead to some serious fear and stress. That's where oncology dietitians come into the picture. So those of you that are interested in learning more, you can actually go to oncologynutrition.org and you can search by state, and you can find a CSO, a Certified Oncology Dietitian. Again, the American Institute of Cancer Research and cancer.org, the American Cancer Society, are great resources. I encourage you to take control because you can. So when it comes to cancer, it's a scary disease, and unfortunately, you can't control exactly the recommended treatment, or you can't control how your body tolerates the chemotherapy or the tamoxifen or the anastrozole or, the surgery. But you can't control what you put in your mouth. And I have this new quote in it that I've been preaching. And it's, I cannot control everything in my life, but I can control what I put into my body. So I cannot control everything in my life, but I can control what I put in my body. I encourage you to try something new. Experiment with produce. So, sometimes patients say to me, well, I like vegetables, but all I do is steam it or just, saute it. Change it up. Try zucchini noodles. Try the cauliflower rice. Roast your vegetables, but maybe add a different spice like cumin or something. Buy some fresh herbs. Change it up. And have fun, because nutrition is fun, and it's not scary, and it shouldn't be something that, we should create a stress in our life. Look at nutrition as an opportunity to make you feel better. And I encourage you to really think about that. And anybody who is listening to this talk that knows me knows that I love vegetables. And if anybody ever sees me eating my lunch at the cafeteria, I eat a lot of vegetables. So I leave you with this. On your to-do list tonight is to figure out ways to eat more vegetables. And here are some references from my presentation. Again, thank you so much for letting me come into your house or wherever you are.
It's a wonderful presentation. And before we open it up for questions, I'm just going to read you a couple from the chat because they're very relevant to what you were just sharing with us. One of the women wants to know if there is a resource for recipes such as the suggestions you're making this evening, because she thinks they're great, but she would love a resource to go to.
Yeah, so actually, if you go to the AICR website, you can sign up for a newsletter where they send you, I think it's weekly or every other weekly, like a new recipe. And then when you go to that Foods That Fight Cancer section, there's a whole section of recipes. And they have it divided up, I believe, between like breakfast and soups and, entrees and things like that. But I would encourage you to use the AICR.org, and also Rebecca Katz, it's Katz. She is a chef that has a lot of really, really, really cool cookbooks out there with a lot of information with regards to oncology nutrition. So her cookbooks are really promoting the plant-based diet.
Okay, and that's Rebecca Katz.
Yep.
We have another couple of questions. One woman wants to know if soy doesn't contain estrogen, why do they call it phytoestrogens?
Oh, great question. So basically, it looks like estrogen under a microscope. So it has a similar profile to estrogen. So that's why the word estrogen comes from phytoestrogens, is because it has a chemical structure that's similar to estrogen.
Okay, thank you. And then we have one woman would like to know if there is a best or preferred form of soy to use when choosing.
Yep, whole soy foods. So everything I was talking about was whole soy foods. So like tofu, edamame, soy milk, those are whole soy foods. You know, if you use processed soy foods, think like a veggie burger or like a soy protein they put in like a wrap or a protein bar, that's fine too. But the research is really promoting more whole soy foods. The studies on survivorship did look at all soy foods. So, you know, your processed soy foods in a veggie burger or like tofu, which is not processed soy.
Oh, okay. Thank you. One woman wants to know if the shaded vegetables need to be avoided.
No. No. When it comes to cancer. So some people find that when they eat certain shaded vegetables, they have an intolerance to it. But when it comes to cancer, definitely not. There are no information about having to avoid that.
Okay. Another woman would like to, well, first of all, you're getting many thank yous in the chat. And what about the butternut squash recipe that your husband uses?
Yep.
They couldn't hear through. There was a little static.
That's so funny. So basically, he roasts butternut squash, and then he roasts chickpeas, and then he throws it all in we have a wok, and he throws it all in the wok with like a chana masala sauce. So it's just like this Indian sauce, but it's really, really good because it's like creamy and it's sweet, but then it's a little savory, and then sometimes he puts like a little bit of cut up like hot peppers in it. But it's really good. So it's butternut squash, chana masala sauce, and roasted chickpeas.
Okay, thank you. And then a woman would like to know your opinion on dairy.
So when it comes to cancer, dairy is kind of in the middle. There's no studies to show, well, actually I shouldn't say that. There's some current research to show if women consume enough calcium, and typically from dairy foods, they have a lower risk of developing breast cancer. That just came out in 2017. But when it comes to like the guidelines for cancer prevention, dairy is kind of in the middle. There's like no recommendation on it because they don't say it causes cancer and they don't say that it fights cancer. So the blanket statement is to choose like low-fat dairy options.
Okay.
My opinion is, have it. I'm not worried about that. I see another one. I'm too thin because I eat plant-based diet. I would encourage you to eat more olive oil and avocados and nuts and seeds. So a lot of the times my patients are losing weight because their treatments like really, putting a lot of stress on their body, or they're not tolerating it well, and those are like my big things that I talk. So basically anytime you eat a savory food, you can drizzle extra olive oil on it, and, when you're snacking, nuts, seeds, avocado is amazing too.
Okay, and we're going to just take that last one in the chat, and then I'm going to open up the lines for questions for anyone who isn't on their computer to type. So someone wants to know if you can speak about organic milk versus regular milk. So, I do say if you are concerned about antibiotics and hormones, choosing an organic product or GMOs, choosing an organic product just kind of gets all of those things out of your head, because if it's organic, it can't use any of those things. If you can afford the organic milk, yeah, I would go for it, but it's not something that I'm recommending to patients, I guess I would say. It's not something that I'm making a big deal about. I would actually, certain produce, I would suggest more organic. But if you can afford the extra $2 for the organic milk, I would definitely suggest it.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify with you, when you were talking about the soy, I knew you were talking about, some of the things like edamame and all that, but did I also understand you to say that you are okay with soy that's in protein bars and some things of that nature? Yeah, good question. So in general, I recommend the whole soy foods like edamame and tofu and soy milk, but having like a protein bar or having a veggie burger, I'm not opposed to. I just try to suggest like the majority of your food is from like less processed. But it is still completely safe in those forms.
Totally safe, 100%.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your presentation.
Oh, thanks.
Hi, I have a question about some of us who have had abdominal surgery. Is there any specific vegetables or fruit? I'm having trouble digesting it, so I had to kind of back off and go on a more of a low-fiber diet.
Yep.
So do you have any suggestions?
Yes, tons. So I didn't explain earlier, but when I was asked to do this presentation, I work mainly with women with cancer. So I work with GYN and breast. So this is like exactly up my alley. And I deal with a lot of low fiber. So you can eat a lot of vegetables that are cooked and that are soft. So these are the big ones I talk about. Carrots, squash, like summer squash, butternut squash, acorn squash, green beans, asparagus. Some people are okay with like peppers, small amounts of like a cooked spinach. If you had like a raw cucumber, if you peeled it. The things that I would stay more away from would be your broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. Those would be a lot of kale. Those would be a little bit more fibrous. But the other thing you could do is you could juice. So if you're juicing, you're not getting the fiber, but you're getting a lot of the nutrition.
Oh, great. Thank you.
If you're sort of pre-diabetic, is it more apt that your start of a tumor would be fed? If you
If you're pre-diabetic, I would encourage you to, think about where you're getting maybe excessive carbohydrates in your diet, like in the form of bread or crackers or pasta or desserts. But when it comes to cancer and feeding or causing cancer, I would try to kind of shift your brain away from that thought process because it's not going to help you. Obviously eating more of these cancer-fighting foods is good for you, but the cool thing about pre-diabetes is it's pre-diabetes, and pre-diabetes can be reversed through diet and exercise.
Thank you.
When you mention not taking supplements unless you know you're deficient in them, what about CoQ10 as you get older?
CoQ10 is not a supplement that I regularly suggest. I feel like most people can get enough through their diet. More things that I would think to be that as you age would be B12 because our acid in our stomach. So basically, the way that we digest and absorb B12 becomes less efficient as we get older. So that's why some people can become deficient in B12. But coenzyme Q10 wouldn't be like a big red flag for me.
But I've read that CoQ10 does seem to diminish as you get older because your ability to process it isn't as good. So that's why they sell it. This CoQ10, and also turmeric.
Yeah. So I can't say that I know enough about the CoQ10. It's not something that I've read a lot about with regards to deficiencies at all. But that doesn't mean that information does not exist. But what was the other thing that you just asked about?
Turmeric.
Oh, turmeric. So the turmeric stuff's really interesting. When I was studying for my recertification for oncology, in certain countries like India where they're just eating a boatload of it, they definitely have a lower incidence of certain types of cancers. But the thing is, the bioavailability is really poor. So the thing with turmeric is you have to consume a lot of it to absorb. And there are some pretty cool studies that show people that eat a lot of it have less cancer, and there's actually cool studies that show that it can make some chemos work better, but then there's also studies that show that it can interfere with other chemos. So I encourage people to really just cook with it and liberally cook with it. But if they're going to take a supplement, I would really encourage them to talk with their oncology pharmacist and oncology dietitian just to make sure that it doesn't interact with any of their medications.
Okay, thank you.
Turmeric's really cool.
Don't you have to
somebody
take
asked
pepper, though, too? There's a thing about pepper, black pepper.
Yes. So black pepper can help your body to absorb turmeric. It's like called piperine, that's in the black pepper. So sometimes you'll see a supplement that has the black pepper with the turmeric. But again, I predict in a few years we're going to know a lot more about turmeric. But right now I feel like it's kind of like every time I try to start, like, asking people more and more other dietitians about it, it's still a gray area. So I would encourage you to cook with it. But, again, if you're going to take a supplement, I would watch out with interactions. Because in excess turmeric can thin your blood. And that would be a concern, especially during chemotherapy.
Okay. A woman in the chat wants to know if sublingual B12 is the best.
That's great, actually. Sublingual B12 is great because it's absorbed really well, actually. So I would say that's the best.
Okay.
Got it. What's your recommendation for alcohol consumption and honey versus sugar? Honey has a lower glycemic index than sugar, but they have about the same calories and carbohydrates. And then alcohol, I would say 1 or less a day.
What about fish? What kind of fish do you recommend?
The kind that has omega-3s, because omega-3s are anti-inflammatory.
So we're talking about salmon?
Yeah, yep, like salmon, tuna, yeah, things like that.
What about
cookies?
Fish?
What about what?
Farm-raised fish. You have a feeling on that?
Yeah, so the wild fish is definitely going to have a healthier profile than the farm-raised fish. But to be honest, if it's between like a steak and a farm-raised salmon, personally, and this is just me with my personal suggestion, I would go with the fish.
Well, I would also look at what country it's originating from, because if it's from certain
Yes.
countries,
Can take that.
what
and
about
then
butter? What about butter? Should we avoid butter?
That's like one of those questions I don't think we'll ever have an answer to. Butter versus margarine. So honestly, butter's got a lot more saturated. Sorry, what?
Or more like fat. What about fat in butter?
So yeah, butter has a lot of saturated fat, and that's why butter's not the healthiest. But if you use it sporadically and you're not like going crazy with it, I'm not worried. If you get a margarine that's trans fat free, that would be a healthier option, but some people don't like margarine. You can get like an olive oil based margarine, or they make some of these butters that have like olive oil in them, so it's like a less saturated fat. I would go with that.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. And
now,
Lauren,
avocado oil is available as well.
Avocado oil is great. Avocados are great.
Okay.
Can
Lauren,
I ask about? Oh, can I just ask about the B vitamin, and does it help neuropathy at all?
D as in dog?
No, I like to know about neuropathy. B like in boy. Do the B vitamins help neuropathy?
Yeah, there's some small studies that show that vitamin B6 can help with neuropathy for diabetics. So I was having some of my patients that had pretty bad neuropathy on like Taxol and Taxotere, try Oxaliplatin, and try it out. But I haven't really had people say that it's really helped them. So I mean, it's not bad. It's safe during chemo, and you can take it. It's worth a shot. I think it's worth a shot. And if you know what, you take more B vitamins than you need, you pee them out. Your pee will just be a little yellow.
True.
Okay. Folks, we have one more question that I missed in the chat, and actually two that I just want to make sure we get answered quickly, and then we're going to have to wrap it up, folks. So one woman wants to know if which bread is better, multigrain, whole grain, or wheat?
100% whole wheat.
100% whole wheat. Thank you. And then the last question of the night is, what about goji berries? Goji berries are just kind of like
they're good for you. But if, you get them dried and they have a lot of sugar or they're, super expensive, I don't really think that they're worth your money. I would just encourage other berries, goji berries and acai. There's always a new superfood out there. Not to say that they're not bad for you. I think they're definitely good for you. It's just sometimes the only way people can get them is dried, and dried has a little bit more sugar.
Okay, well, thank you. And thank you, Lauren, so much for such an outstanding presentation, for your passion, enthusiasm, dedication, and commitment to the cancer community, and for taking the time out tonight to share all of this with us here. And to all of you folks who called in from across the nation to hear this wonderful presentation, which you will have access to in about 5 weeks on our website. We will let you know. But everyone, please have a good night, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.